It's appropriate this video's in black because it's a mystery. So Rudolf Steiner is the great figure of modern times, whether people, public figure of modern times, whether people realize that or not. Why? Because we live in one world. It's not split up into different worlds. We live in one world, and fully half of that world is spiritual. Everything has a spirit, everything has an energy, everything, particularly things that we say have life, are spiritually charged, and our intentions, our feelings, our thoughts, everything counts more than the physical. What conscious beings do with their consciousness and what they're motivated by and what their intentions are when they act, speak, and simply exist in the world is the most powerful thing here. Quantum physics is catching up with that fact. So now we have, in the early 20th century, not only Rudolf Steiner, but Edgar Cayce and Harold W. Percival, who's hardly anybody's heard of, but I argue that he is the second most um, powerful voice of reality that we have in our time. Rudolf Steiner being the absolute first. He says a lot of freaky stuff. He gave lectures. I forget, it's 5,000, 6,000 lectures all over Europe. They wanted him to be the head of the Theosophical Society. He passed because he knew there were special things in the Western tradition that must be championed and brought out and brought forth and disseminated, not only for the West, but for the world, for humanity at large. He understood something very special about Jesus Christ, and not just one particular thing. I mean, he had a special understanding of Jesus Christ. And the Theosophical Society was into grooming J. Krishnamurti as the Maitreya Buddha, which Krishnamurti, rejected and became a great spiritual leader, but a very iconoclast, anti-authoritarian, anti-cult person, settled in Ojai, near where I had my Zen training, Ojai, California. Anyways, Steiner was rigorously trained himself in philosophy and in every relevant discipline, basically. Just as a curious person, there were so many books and journals being published all the time. There is no greater time of intellectual fervor and intellectual exchange. There were debate societies. Just look at the Theosophical Society and how many members it could have, and the earnestness with people in all of these different societies and different groups. It was a very special time. I propose that it was the healthiest time in human history. I propose that. World War I broke our innocence. World War II absolutely established that as as an absolute fact. And these greater forces took over, especially particularly the financial sector and you know the shadow government in the United States. Like different negative actually forces have kind of taken over the world since that time. It was an age of innocence, and it showed more what we really were than any time since, except you get plenty of glimpses, you know? But at that time, you could be a person of any standing, and if you used your brain and you thought about things and you developed your thoughts and you could express them, if you had original thoughts that were relevant and useful and helpful, and you could just get any kind of person's ear, which was quite easy to do at the time, you could go somewhere and you could become somebody. And it wasn't about ego. You could give your contribution to the world. There weren't gatekeepers like there were before. Now we've, during the 20th century, now we've broken out again, but there's so much slop and garbage, and we have been dumbed down horribly. We've been dumbed down horrifically. They had higher IQs, people. They had better posture. They had higher IQs. Look at any video from the 1900s of people, and they had good posture, and you could see the dignity that we don't have by and large. So naturally, of course, these societies and these publishing houses and these books and these journals and these they were flourishing. And Rudolf Steiner came out of this time, and at 7 years old, he understood that he was different, that most people were blind. He saw the spiritual world. And we don't know exactly how much he saw and how much he developed over time. But he kept it under his hat. He decided to keep it to himself and just develop as a person and be more and more independent. And he would be an adult one day, and he would be able to freely choose what to do with it. And instead of like setting himself up to get put in a mental institution or something like that, he just kept it to himself, and he developed. And yes, on the train, he met a man that used to collect herbs in the forest and sell them to apothecaries. This is the world that we used to have. You could just know herbs, and you can make a living just collecting herbs, bundle them up, dry them, put them in bundles, keep them all nice, and get them to the apothecary in Vienna or wherever, and they would pay you good money to do that. These days, every single thing is part of a scheme, and you can't just function as an individual and do something like that. You can't just get good at something and then just put it into the fair marketplace that hasn't been dominated by some behemoth like Amazon. It was a different time, and he rose to the top of the Theosophical Society on his merits, on the fact that he was clairvoyant, he was very articulate, able to express himself, and he had something. And it wasn't charisma, it wasn't personality, it wasn't the ability to trick others. He had something. But he had to pass on that, and so he created the Anthroposophic Society. Oh, I'm not going to delete this. He created he created anthroposophy, Anthroposophic Society, and had plenty of followers and grew huge. And he gave 5,000-6,000 lectures, and that is the main body of work that we draw from. And when I say we, I don't know. I've never met a single anthroposophist. I've never met anybody that is actually sincerely into learning from Steiner like me. Never met a one. I met plenty of people with respect for Steiner, plenty meaning less than 100. I've met people that have benefited from his understanding in a narrow field or a different endeavor or a particular product of one of the many things that have grown out of his thinking and his expression. But I don't even care. This is not a social project. This is not about anything external. This is about understanding what the world really is. This is about truth. This is about, yes, it's about empowerment, but there are plenty of shorter, cheaper ways to power. It's been pointed out that the most rigorous intellectual endeavor that you can study, that you can do today is Steiner. And, other people could definitely argue that astrophysics and different things are. And so I don't want to push that forward. That's not really, who cares? But to skip over some of the background of what he's saying, what he said. Now I'm going to get into his content. I want to tell you that the main points that you can get from Steiner are right here, and I will present them. We are where we are in a spiritual hierarchy. When the Bible speaks about angels and archangels and things like that, it's showing that we have a historical understanding of what he expands upon greatly expands upon and articulates. We are part of a spiritual hierarchy of beings. And it's very complex. There's a lot to know. Our physical senses show us half of reality. And he developed something called spiritual science, which is developing our psychic capacities to be able to see, detect, understand, interact with that other half of reality which we're generally fairly blind to in this time. We were much less blind to it in the past. So he develops spiritual science, and he would have us all be spiritual scientists. Now, his understanding is that, so everything from Steiner comes from him actually seeing the world as it is. And I take Steiner at face value, that he was honest, that all this freaky stuff that he said was true. And I don't care if I say said or says, it doesn't matter, because it's not that he's a spirit that lives and I worship him or anything like that, but these words live. They're a better representation. They're a bigger chunk of the truth than anybody's ever presented to the public before. So he talks about all the mystery schools that existed in the past, and there was a thing that happened around the time of, like his birth or whatever. And so he died at like 1930 or whatever. Was that the secret societies, the secret initiation societies, there were certain forces saying that we have to spread this information, and then the new forces, people and groups, and the Theosophical Society being one of them. And then the old guard said, no, we have to continue to keep it secret, and that's a terrible thing to let it loose on the public. People aren't ready. Well, Steiner was part of this first group that understood that it is now time for the world at large to begin to deal with spiritual reality. And that specifically scientific materialism was getting really intense. It was going too far, and people were going to be just automaton robots soon if the holders of spiritual truths here on this earth and in the human race did not come forward and start to spread the information and disseminate it. And so Steiner he's the great disseminator of spiritual information in our time. And so he passed 100 years ago, but that is not that long in time. There are others. Edgar Casey was much more like random about it. He wasn't so well trained, and he was it was a different trip, but he did give information. But the information that he gave, if you benefit from Edgar Casey, and then you really have digested a lot of his material, then you go over to Steiner. It's you know it's going from elementary school to university immediately. And no disrespect towards Edward Casey, not at all. Another one that hardly anybody knows about is Harold Waldwin Percival. Harold Percival. His great tome is Thinking in Destiny, and that is what I got a hold of kind of before I became acquainted with Steiner, and I absorbed a lot of really intense information, which corroborates with Steiner. And he had a similar experience that he was 7 years old, and he decided, oh, everybody else is blind. Well, I'm just going to shut up and get to adulthood and figure out what to do with this. And that's a whole trip, and it's a bunch, and I'll give video or videos on that, but much bigger and much more disciplined, sustained presentation that humans, at least somewhat of his information, can digest and handle, and then some few of us can digest and handle all of it. He did that, and he was the guy. And so now there's a resurgence of Steiner, because why? Because the forward edge of anything takes a while to reach critical mass and start to go exponential and spread. I don't have I don't doesn't I don't have any idea what Steiner would feel that it's taking so long, and it doesn't matter. He understood that in 1930 or so, people would begin to get their psychic powers back. We had a lot of psychic powers back in the day, 6,000 years ago, whatever, but we weren't so individuated. So we needed to individuate, and that would mean that we would lose our psychic powers as part of the cost. And you can kind of feel that, or have a lot, suss out the logic to that, but I won't explain it. But that was part of that was a trade-off. There was a trade-off to develop our intellectual capacities, develop our left brain, and to develop our scientific thinking and logic and reason. As part of the individuation process, these are the two big things that we were working on: becoming logical, reasonable, thinking beings and individuals. They go hand in hand, and we did that, and we've been doing that, and now we are coming back into our psychic abilities as strong individuals, whereas we had greater psychic abilities 6,000 years ago, but we were vaguely just part of a tribe. Yes, we were individuals, but we were not so. I don't like chocolate, and I prefer sunsets to sunrises, and whatever makes us individual. We're incredibly individual now, and that's been the main project. And so what happened during this time is Buddha gave us the law. That's one of the great events in our recent times. 2,600 years ago, Buddha gave us the law. You have desires, you will easily be manipulated and conquered by your desires, and they will own you if you don't get real and study the self. So now we have psychology, and people are Buddhism is what the Buddha taught, excuse me, not Buddhism. What the Buddha taught is infiltrating everywhere. And that's 2,600 years later with the rise of psychology. That's the major way that we are growing for the last 100 years or so is the rise of psychology and sociology. People are understanding ourselves, and we're understanding each other, and we're understanding group dynamics, and we're understanding manipulation, and we're understanding this allows us to come back together as strong individuals and to come into harmony as strong individual souls. The main thing is you are a soul, of course, right? So the Buddha taught us how to study ourselves. And that has everything to do with this individuation, but it also is the apex of our individuation, that we are able to understand ourselves as separate creatures from others, and we are able to understand the other and be able to have compassion for the other and work with the other for win-win, like going onwards and upwards together. And that's the second to last major event that happened on the planet. The last major event that happened on the planet, he tends to focus on the mystery of Golgotha, what happened on the cross, Jesus Christ. So this is different. Buddha, you could say, was a normal human being, a very special human being. He was not divine. Jesus Christ is something different. The mystery of Golgotha, as he prefers to refer to it, and that's what you hear when you study Steiner. That's what everybody says, and so I will go with that because it is not merely one thing. There's exotericism and esotericism. If you're an exoteric Christian, you probably bailed out. You probably bailed out on this. But imagine you accept Christianity in its exoteric form, and now you're checking this out and you can stand it, and you're investigating it. Well, this is esoteric Christianity. Yes, it is Christianity. To study Steiner and to embrace Steiner is actually becoming a Christian in a very different form. And this is how I became a Christian. And it's been less than 2 years. So I always respected Jesus Christ, right up there with Buddha. But I came to Buddhism and I did not need what I saw in Christianity, because Buddhism is so much more well developed as far as studying the self and understanding this life. But then if you want a relationship with the divine, it doesn't really cover that. It is not a theism. So my curiosity, I always put Jesus up right at the, like probably above the level of Buddha, but I don't know. And then Steiner allowed me a way to Christ, which is, it doesn't matter if who's the creator of the universe. This comes from me. It doesn't matter who's the creator of the universe. Don't be hung up on that. Who cares? What is important is what is going on here in this world. If you can handle not needing absolutes, then you can handle esoteric Christianity as shown by Rudolf Steiner. I believe it. The mystery of Golgotha, when Jesus was up on the cross, he did not merely bleed into the earth in order to forgive our sins and set this magic spell of your sins are forgiven. No, not exactly that. I'll explain that in a moment, but it's only 50%. He bled into the earth because some divine spirit needed to do, in part, he bled into the earth. His spirit soul through a human body with real blood into the earth in order, in part, to remedy the natural horrible selfishness that we would have, of course, naturally in this individuation process that we were going through. Without a divine being bleeding blood from the greatest suffering possible, almost, probably, that you could have in a human body. So it's not just blood, but suffering blood, unjust, innocent suffering blood unjustly shed into the earth in a torturous manner. Such a sacrifice, such generosity, such unselfishness. Do you understand? It was a magical, I don't want to shy away from saying magical. It's a spiritual remedy for the natural selfishness that would happen. So I don't know how selfish we were before that. I think we were pretty darn selfish. Our animal nature is to be selfish. And not completely, and I'm not insulting animals. But he did that, and he also many other things happen on the cross. Many other things happen. That is the last event that happened in human history, the last major event that happened in human history. It's a big deal. It's just as big a deal as exoteric Christians believe it to be. It's just as big a deal. But it would seem when you say this element and that element and that element that he gave so that we would not be total selfish jerks. It doesn't seem like as big a deal as what exoteric Christians say it is, but if you put them all together, it's a big deal. So the fact is this: there are plenty of negative evil spirits around, and I'll tell you the main two, according to Steiner, and I absolutely believe this. I'll stop saying that. I wouldn't be here if I didn't absolutely believe the things that he says. The main spirit here on this planet now is Jesus Christ. And you could just say Christ, because Jesus is the guy with the body. That's the personality. He's a sweetie, he's charismatic, he's super interesting. He's like throwing the tables of the money changers over. He's freaking he's an icon. He's amazing. He's beautiful. He's a sweetheart. He's got a beard. But Christ is what entered Jesus for the last 3 years of his life, what we know as his ministry. That's when he was divinely infused. And that's when amazing things happened. And that is the basis of what we have now. That's the beginning of what we have now. So Christ is alive. Christ is the dominant positive spirit here, available to humans. There are other positive spirits. There are plenty of negative spirits here. We have this to deal with. So the two main negative spirits that are here are Ahriman, and Lucifer. Lucifer incarnated in China 5,000 or so years ago. I think it's less than that. He's responsible for us, for so much of our spiritual wisdom. For the Vedas and these things from Hinduism, for the way that we understand Buddhism, for the way that we understand Greek philosophy, from a Luciferian view, and don't get hung up on the word. This is Steiner's Lucifer. A Luciferian view of the world and the spiritual principles and things of the world it is what we have still to this day, but it's feeling a little bit old, and it's feeling a little worn out, and that's why you have so many people saying, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, because our religions come from a different time, and they're a little bit old. This is something in Steiner. He said that things are always changing. So now we have Jesus, now we have Christ, but he doesn't have a body, but he is the dominant spirit here, and now he is the guardian of the gates. It used to be Anubis, weighing your heart. Is your heart equal to a feather? Then you can go to the duat or whatever. That was a different time. Things have changed now. The guardian of it is Jesus Christ. So these are the main. He's the main positive spirit, and the main negative spirits happen to be two: Ahriman and Lucifer. And yes, I've mentioned Lucifer. Ahriman is the absolute spirit of matter. He's the absolute spirit of matter, and he will be incarnated soon. During this millennium. He will incarnate during this millennium, and we should prepare for it. And And the main preparation that we can do is to know that it's going to happen. So that takes a second to just know and to see that all these rules, all these laws, everything's encoded, everything's number crunched. It's Ahriman is about control. He's about absolute control and absolute materialism. He wants us to be automatons stuck here in this material world with no spiritual understanding. No spiritual understanding. It's an idea that there is no spiritual world. There's nothing going on. There is no heart. There is no soul. There is no spirit. There are no demons. There are no angels. It's just all material. So he's doing a good job, isn't he? But also from Steiner, you understand that the Kali Yuga has been over for over 100 years now, and that since 1930 or so, we are more and more people are being born with spiritual vision like he was. So, in general, we are coming back into our understanding that this is a spiritual world. And we're going, since the Middle Ages, it's been less spirituality in the population. And now it's coming back, and it's coming back fast, and it's coming back strong. And so Steiner will just grow and grow because people have very complex worldviews, or they're just numbed out and childish. And sure, a lot of people are numbed out and childish. But if you have an intellectual life, your worldview becomes very complex. And if your intellectual life acknowledges that there is a spirit world, then you need more than you can get from our old religious traditions. You need something like Steiner. He's going to become very popular because he gives you what you need to chew on. People don't buy these, really thinking people don't buy these little fairy tales. They need something to really chew on, and the universe, according to Rudolf Steiner, is huge. It's massive. There's been a lot going on. So I'm just going to give you a small sample before we check out here. Don't know how many minutes it's been. Before there was Earth and we had solid physical bodies, there was a phase called Earth, Sun, Moon. I won't go back before then. He speaks about before then too, called Old Saturn or whatever. But this world was Earth, Sun, Moon. And now this is showing you how freaky Steiner gets. And you don't have to go there. You can focus on the stuff that's more basic and more relevant. But I'm interested in all of it. Just that's how I am. So there was Earth, Sun, Moon, all mixed together. And oh, by the way, of course, as the mind only school in Buddhism says, and as some people throughout history have always said, spirit is first and matter is second. Okay? Spirit is first, matter follows. We create matter with spirit. The Big Bang is just, come on, it's ridiculous. So anyways, there was this phase where it was Earth, Sun, Moon. Then the highest spirits, the most beautiful highest spirits, were like basically feeling oppressed, and they needed to separate out. So they separated out and went into the sun. And the sun is filled with really high spirits. One spirit stayed back. Yahweh. Yahweh stayed back. And whenever you have a name like Yahweh or Lucifer or Christ, understand that there is a lot behind. There's a lot of truth behind what you think. You think you know Yahweh. There's a lot more behind. So you can understand from Steiner that Yahweh was one of the spirits that if he stayed with his peers and he didn't just do a self-serving, a selfless service to this world, he would have been there with his mates, and I'm sure life would have been much easier. But when you're selfishness, I do not believe, I believe does not play into things very much when you get into higher hierarchies of beings. And so he stayed behind, and he's been watching over us and helping us, doing stuff, giving service, and giving energy. So then it was Earth Moon. Now, the darkest, most negative spirits, it's kind of like a morass. It was sort of just like a swamp, just this really dense swamp, and we did not have solid bodies, and the worst of us were just suffocating everything, and it's just how it was. I don't know if you could say that that the sun spirits needed to go off because they emotionally, I don't know if they felt emotions. I don't know how this all, I don't know everything about how all this works. But they separated off into the sun, and then the worst spirits is getting too oppressive for those of us in the middle and that ended up here on Earth. And the negative spirits separated into the moon. So no insult to, like, the moon is feminine, and, no insult to women, no insult to anything about the moon. But that is, according to Steiner, how the moon, I don't know about how the moon was created, but that's, I don't know if you need to get hung up too much into the physicality of it. And that it's still that way, that the moon is all bad, the sun is all bad. To study Steiner, you go beyond this kind of thinking. So then the worst spirits went off into the moon, and then we were here in our sort of balanced state where we can be good, we can be bad, and we began to solidify more and more, and begin to, be animal and have animal bodies, and go out of the ocean, walk upright, whatever. But we were always there, and it's constantly changing and evolving. And in the same way about not having black and white rigid thinking, remember that one last practical piece of advice. I just wanted to say that sun, moon, earth thing about how freaky Steiner can get. And one last practical piece of advice is because this is a mixture of just showing you how things are, and then also there are some practical applications that I don't mind elaborating on a little bit from time to time. And practical advice is that, yes, Lucifer is on your left shoulder. I believe I got it correct. And Ahriman's on the right shoulder. I don't know if it matters. But Lucifer's in front of you, and Ahriman's behind you. And Lucifer's above you, and Ahriman's below you at all times. But Christ is in the center of you. So if you can just take that, if you made it this far and you can just take that, then I do believe you've benefited a lot. Because, Buddhism calls itself the middle way. The law of balance is something you will never escape, my friend. And sorry to talk like that. I've just been giving information now. I'm saying my friend. It's a little bit patronizing. No, the law of balance is something you'll never escape. And with this understanding that you have a spirit that would cause you to be an escapist and just play video games all day long, or whatever, just retreat into poetry, or whatever kind of escapist trip you could do. Doom scroll, of course, is an obvious one. That's Lucifer. Or somebody that would make you just into power and control, and you just become a Wall Street trader, and you just only care about money, and you treat everybody just with what they will give you, and you're just selfish and dominating, controlling, and you just want to, just dominate and control the world. That's Ahriman. They're with you at all times. And remember, Lucifer allows you to be poetic and see things in a poetic way because he's part of you. And Ahriman allows you to be practical and not get screwed by bad people, and keep your feet on the ground, and take care of your body, and do what's right. Ahriman's part of you. Now, either of them uninformed by Christ, it's a mess. Both of them and every single thing that comes into your life informed by Christ, which is backed up by Buddha's wisdom. I like that. I'm just throwing that in there. Inside you, you know what is correct. Inside you, in the center, you know where to go. You know how to filter the information. You know what to do with everything, and you know how to behave, and you know what's the right course, and you know what is the right response. And all you have to do is center yourself in the love of Jesus Christ. And if all of this sounded like it wasn't infused with love, if Steiner wasn't giving all this information with love, if I wasn't doing this video, which is black, if I wasn't doing this audio with love, then what's it all for? This is all about love. It's all about infusing your life with love and infusing this entire world with love. Then we will be doing our spiritual job. So, blessings to you. Please join and subscribe, all that stuff. I hate to do that, but really appreciate it if it happens. And but really be well. Be really well. And this life you have is precious, and you are a force in this world. And there is no reason for this world to be so full of meanness. And we can change the world one breath at a time together. Huge love to you. I wanted to say I love you. I do. I do. Love you lots.